Ah, yes. I know what game will win the contest. I see an orange feline eating a goddamn humongous dish of lasagna. And he detests Mondays. Chester Cheetah? Maybe. Close your eyes with me. Together, we will see the winner.
Hello?
You've got 3 days in which to return the Golden Ninja Warrior, or else you die.
Excuse me, sir. This is a Sega Saturn YouTube channel.
SegaXtreme, celebrating its 28th anniversary with the 4th annual Saturn Homebrew Contest. Witness the bloody struggle of the search for the unlimited force of polygon rendering. An outstanding action-packed adventure between a category triangle with the deadliest Saturn developers. Original games, translation patches, tools and utilities, judged by a supreme court of Saturn nerds.
Including me. Let's go over each entry, starting with original games. The Saturn Scene's visual novel Brazilian is back, the first early bird on the forum thread. In last year's contest, G. Sansigolo finished the short visual novel Lighthouse of Sao Bento do Oeste, and submitted a demo of Red Moon, his much bigger project. The case of the city Botucaiba, pronunciation unsure, is a sort of side story to Lighthouse. Same characters, same art style. We have lovely hand-drawn characters from Moom, overlaying real-life pictures of the cities Botucatu and Murmansk. Right away, the menu gives you the option to choose between English and Portuguese, which makes sense considering Sansigolo's roots. There is a strong Saturn fanbase across Brazil and Portugal, so I think having a Portuguese option built into the game is pretty damn neat. Sansigolo is releasing this under the name Neuromage Studio, saying this game uses a combination of the community-wide Joe engine and the Neptune engine. The main character from Lighthouse, Detective Renee Brass, is back. She travels to the city of Botucaiba to investigate its mysteries, once again meeting up with her friend Julia. Sansigolo says this game was originally made for a 2022 game jam with the theme Healthy City. So the plot centers around this city having a mysteriously fantastic infrastructure. Despite the city's success, not a lot of people know about it. Renee and Julia want to figure out why. One key difference from Lighthouse is the addition of music, and the tunes here are Slap City. English is not Sansigolo's native tongue, so you might find some small grammar issues. The grammar is better than his past releases. It's just small things like where is her instead of where is she, stuff like that. Nothing that would break the game or make it too hard to understand. This mystery offers up a small handful of plot-altering decisions, much like Lighthouse, though the whole thing is pretty short. I casually played through the entire game in less than 20 minutes. If you like Sansigolo's past visual novels, or enjoy overall chill vibes to the cathode glow of your Sega Saturn, I recommend checking it out. From the mind that brought us Fly vs. Fly in last year's contest comes a demo of Shmup Salad. Damage X is carrying on the tradition of a favored genre among the Saturn scene. The sprite-based bullet threading reminds us players to use our manners, selecting utensils fit for certain types of foods. You play as this bowl. It has a large hitbox, like layer section big. You can select up to 4 different utensils to fire at oncoming snack fleets. Weapons individually upgrade the better you play. The knife is your standard spread shot. Forks are more powerful but fire straight on. Spoons have an awkward trajectory but pack a punch, and the straws snake through enemies like a weird plasma beam. I personally favored the fork. While I had a difficult time getting the manners multiplier to increase, I still learned plenty about tableside bullet dodging etiquette. Time out your shots well, experiment with all weapons, and mine that large hitbox of yours. The spoon is funky, could be big brain though. After messing around in this 2-level demo, I got a 1cc, leaving me
hungry for more.
Anyway, I really dig this video game and hope DamageX finds the time to fill us up with more levels. If you're remotely familiar with Saturn Homebrew, you've probably heard of Hellslave. Using his own engine, XL2 is creating large 3D Saturn games with incredible draw distance and smooth frame rates. But this year, he's delivering a shocking performance art. I am serious in saying his demo for this year's contest is just unreal. It's Unreal. The first 2 levels of Unreal, running on a Sega Saturn.
You have entered a response area.
You crazy son of a bitch, you did.
XL2, Corvido, and Ponut64 teamed up to bring the technically marvelous 1998 PC game to a 1994 console. No RAM card, this is just the machine, widely accused of not being able to do 3D, running Unreal. Naming the project Irreel, the team is setting an extraordinarily high bar for this year's contest. To put this into perspective, this is the same console that got one of the worst ports of Doom. Lobotomy Software would later get Quake and Power Slave running well, but even those games pale in comparison to this never-before-seen technical achievement. The frame rate only dips below 20 in a few areas. The dynamic stereo sound from Ponut sinks you into Unreal's atmosphere. Polygons in the distance subdivide instead of fogging up, making way for wide, expansive landscapes. Peer across a sunken valley into the waterfall on the other side, as otherworldly birds fly across the scenery. Collect weapons in tucked away places and fight fully 3D aliens and soldiers as you make your way to the finish. XL2 has once again outdone himself, proving that the Saturn is a highly capable 3D machine. This is perhaps the greatest technical achievement to ever grace the Sega Saturn. The player wakes up in a prison spaceship right after things got messy. Everyone seems to have broken out, and you occasionally hear screams and explosions as you wander the crashed vessel. You were supposed to be brought to a prison planet, but you find your way out and discover you're here instead. Through finding weapons and ammo, you can blast your way to the end of level 2, thus beating what's been made so far. When you complete this demo, a 3rd level loads. It's a sort of asset testing ground, featuring a few other items and this big guy. Here, we can go through the portals and see how the major technical accomplishments function, including these sick reflections. In the main game, there are security monitors showing the player's character moving in real time. Look at the lighting effects you get in each room, and the light reflections you get from the weapon as it fires down hallways. The draw distance is seemingly limitless. The utilization of VDP2 for the skybox and fog work incredibly well. It's just nuts. The controls are exactly the same as in Power Slave, which are probably the best FPS controls you can get on a Saturn pad. To reiterate, this is not a port of the Unreal Engine. It is XL2's custom engine being used to port the video game known as Unreal. For right now, they're still working on the engine being used for this. It's not clear if the entire game will be ported, but that really doesn't matter. Just imagine the possibilities if this ever goes open source. Think of the incredible 3D Saturn games we could suddenly pull off with this. The different genres that this could adapt to. Ports of late 90s games that people would have laughed at the idea of porting to Saturn. You could make Gen War good. You could port Perfect Dark or GoldenEye. Hell, maybe even Half-Life if you really wrestle with it. Makes you wonder, could this really have been Saturn's post-97 life? Send this team a time machine and let them save Saturn. Walk up to Sega HQ, show them this, and yell,
XL2, Corvido, and Ponut were able to build this on a stock Saturn! With quads!
We follow up the technical marvel with a success story in style, design, and transfiguration. Fran Matsusaka is submitting the first part of this cutesy witchy adventure called Bridget Bishop. You play as Bridget, a young witch who's noted as an enjoyer of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and magical experiments. The game starts with her mistakenly turning her cat Calcetines into a frog. The pet is very angry. Now you have to figure out how to change it back. You explore the house in Resident Evil style movement, using the D-pad to move around the different perspectives of the rooms, pressing A to interact with objects, spooky family members, and doorways. You're given instructions on what ingredients you need to create the right potion to untransform your cat, and it doesn't always go as planned. The sound design is bubbly, the characters are cartoony, and this whole mini world is creatively put together. Lots of attention to detail here with the writing, clues, background, and even the menu designs. You get responsive sound effects to the minigames and menuing.
Yeah.
It's all wonderfully drawn together.
Yeah.
The text boxes are fun to read, good descriptions of all the items, and you get stuff like the Count from Sesame Street as one of the vampire portraits in the back of this room. Also, there's a Spanish language option, so that's pretty neat. This is using the Joe engine. Matsusaka sort of works with the simplicity of Joe's engine to pull off this vibrant art style with Bridget Bishop. It doesn't skip a beat. The character models are all well put together and the animations just work. Nothing doesn't work.
Yeah.
The game is, sadly, a bit short. It took me under an hour to beat it. But what is here is very enjoyable. I sincerely hope Matsusaka fleshes this out into a larger adventure. I hope to play Bridget Bishop again sometime soon. Please keep up the great work. Not too long ago, on the eve of Christmas Eve, two homebrewers have a chat on my live stream.
So, how quickly do you think you could slap together some really crappy Christmas theme assets? Like for me to just like overnight a crappy little 2D Christmas game.
Well, you have a lot of ideas, so what's this idea?
Galaga, but instead of aliens, it's presents.
And so they did it. Within a span of a single day, this is what they made. Not only are they adding another shmup to the library, they're expanding the list of applicable Christmas games for the Sega Saturn with Galaxmas. It is just as it sounds, a quick and dirty shmup with static sprites. You're Santa in a sleigh, fighting enemies like zombified trees, evil elk, spooky Santa hats, and flaming snowmen. I like that you launch Cole in 6 different directions with the 6 face buttons. That's pretty neat. Each level lasts about as long as whatever royalty-free metal cover of a Christmas song is playing in the background. A new enemy is introduced in each level. Everything seems way too easy in the beginning, stockpiling 1-ups while easily combing through bare fleets. Then you get to level 6. This is when it becomes an untethered swarm of Christmas-themed chaos. The meta becomes stockpiling enough extra lives in the early game to get through stage 6, which I have yet to be able to do. If you're looking for a game to add to your Christmas playlist, other than Knights, Die Hard, and Thick Santa FMV, Galaxmas is worthy of consideration. What's more impressive is that this was created in such a short amount of time, coded from start to finish in less than 24 hours. Contest host Dr. Emerald Nova himself created this with help from Xenos and Malenko on Christmas Eve. Alright, here we have a 1.7 megabyte submission from VBT entitled Magic, a promising sounding entry. VBT is one of our two Orange Cat boys, so upon firing this up, my mind fills with dreams of lightly cynical boomer humor and lasagna-inducing fatigue. We already get a glowy 80s themed desktop wallpaper splash screen proudly presenting VBT's project. The player presses start, then this. A loop from Around the World by Daft Punk is playing in the background. I've muted the audio to circumvent copyright detection. It could use more garf, but I'm still satisfied with the overall experience. Another homebrew Sega Saturn game in the books. The longtime white whale of the Sega Saturn enters the ring. No, not Shenmue or Virtua Fighter 3. SonicXtreme. It's the fabled mainline blue blur game Saturn owners were infamously promised throughout the late 90s. Through years of development hell, it never came out. Its legacy leaves us with several preview videos, small proof of concept prototypes, and shattered dreams. This documentary from Stuff We Play is worth watching, since you know my sorry ass will take decades to release one. A few SegaXtreme contests ago, XL2 released a demo of what this game might have been on his own engine, calling it SonicXtreme. He also recreated this well-watched Metal Sonic boss fight. In 2022, fisheye lenses and all, Voxel is submitting his take on SonicXtreme, with the purpose of recreating what fans saw in all those videos. From Jade Gully to Crystal Frost, a bonus stage, a loop demo, and a boss fight. Now you can grab the controller and get a taste of what could have been in this work-in-progress demo. Sonic can run and double jump. Voxel says the spin dash move might be added at a later time. The draw distance on these rotating worlds is far enough to travel around, but there are a few blind jumps here and there. Many of the items are placeholders for now, and the death mechanic is not implemented. If you fall, just pause and restart. The frame rate seems to stay at 30 frames per second most of the time, but will occasionally drop to 20. There's only one spot I noticed where it went down to 15. That seemed to break my ability to jump, but again, that was just one spot. Being able to weave around the tunneling environments of this insane concept is pretty fun. This really compares well to the preview videos we saw back in the 90s, even using the same level design. It's like you're the one playing the never-released demo. While XL2's Extreme wins in draw distance, Voxel's demo is by far the most true to the original. Jade Gully and Crystal Frost both have an endpoint, so you can beat them. The bonus level also has a large ring to finish off this quick area. Be careful with those jumps, though. The desert is just a field with this loop track, sort of a proof of concept. Voxel caps this off with a boss fight against Fang the Sniper. It took me a couple of tries to get used to the enemy's hitboxes. They're not exactly where you'd expect them to be. Fang has a good variety of attack patterns, adding more to his rotation every time he's hit. 4 smacks, and he's down and out. Sadly, Voxel's making it clear they do not intend to add more levels or finish the game, so to speak. This is probably all we're going to get. Voxel is still in university and feels the need to focus their time on learning modern programming. Perhaps there's someone out there who might take on the charge and fully finish a SonicXtreme game. For now, we at least have these, and that's still pretty cool. From the great mind that brought us magic, VBT is deciding to submit an actual video game to the contest. Back in my very first SegaXtreme contest video, we saw the work in progress for his Wolf port. Not only is it pretty much done, not only is it enhanced with glorious PoneSound, but it includes a whopping 12 versions of Wolfenstein. Behold, Multiboot. His entry to the contest thread includes this delightful meme, straight out of the 90s hit film where Bruce Willis finds some blue aliens hiding large, important, sharp stones inside her body. Just look at all of this Wolf and Stein. With no official ports to this console, never before have we seen this much Wolfenstein in one Sega Saturn package. The frame rate stays at a consistent and buttery 60 all throughout, as the D-pad wielding warrior stomps through Hitler's army in glorious 3D. It's just fun, which makes sense since Wolfenstein is also just fun. Some of the alternative Wolves include Burgerstein, an artery-clogging freedom fest through America's finest cuisine. We also get whatever the heck Frankenstein 2 is, complete with non-livestream friendly sprites. And in the true spirit of giving, this submission from VBT is adding to the meager catalog of Christmas-themed Saturn games. A holiday miracle. VBT sends in a terrific entry with his Wolf Multiboot disc. A great port and then some. Only downside, it could use more garf. This game is many games. Behold, a bountiful harvest of micro-sized software nestled in a tasteful and easy-to-look-at presentation. Irreel is submitting a Chip 8 emulator to the Homebrew Contest. Chip 8 is a low-level programming language made in the 70s with the intent to make game development easier. It's still used by a niche fanbase to this day. You can see clones of basic games like Breakout and Snake, while other devs use it to make ultra-simplified versions of things like F-Zero and Ace Attorney. In this build, Irreel threw in 50 public domain Chip 8 games. You can change the color scheme, controls, and adjust other settings while playing. I appreciate the menu design. It's not just a text wall. Love the notepad off to the right of the game list and the simplistic setup of the in-game menuing. It looks good, it's intuitive, and it just works. The emulation seems to work great on my Saturn. I noticed zero performance issues with these adorable small video games. While the target audience for this might also be small, Irreel knocked this project clean out of the park. If you wanted this, you're getting a grade A version of it. Terrific work. Last year, Super Ray brought us a demo of his original game, Sky Blaster. It was a simple, endless demo, with a couple bad guys and a great 2-song soundtrack from Random Stuff. This year, Ray is bringing us closer to the final vision of this 3D shmup. Mother of Segatop, the soundtrack, the FMV cutscene, the story mode, the co-op. This demo is packing a hefty polygonal punch, well above its previous weight class. It's so good, and as you can clearly hear,
the music is amazing!
Where to begin? The beginning, duh. So we boot it up, we get a few splash screens, and are greeted with an original FMV cutscene. In the not-so-vast reaches of space, a few enemy ships emerge from this tear in the fabric of physics. Then, a glimpse of what's to come in a later build? In true SNESFox and/or G. Darius fashion, the music picks the f*** up as your ship flies out of the hangar, soaring far above the city to intercept these mysterious ships. The loading screen has the spinning 3D logo. With help from PoneSound, Random Stuff composed 12 tracks for this build. From the start screen, we get the option to play the story mode demo or an endless mode, both with co-op support. Your ship moves with physics similar to that of a paper plane. It might seem unwieldy at first, but it's pretty easy to get used to. This does support the 3D pad, and I do think this lends itself to analog controls, but it is still very much playable with the D-pad. We get a nice scrolling background with rolling clouds across a grid as fleets of baddies enter the ring. You start with the single shot, upgradable to twin and quad shots. Screen bombs are also a thing, useful in a pinch. There is a reasonable amount of bomb ammo, power-ups, and one-ups throughout the demo. With each new stage, the background changes, and another ripper of a song tears through your speakers. If you make it through the handful of levels, you're thanked for playing. The game over jingle is also killer. Endless Demo is exactly as it sounds. The game stops when you stop having lives. Every now and then, the background and song changes. With time, more fleets swamp you at once. We also get treated to a few songs not heard in the story demo, so that's pretty awesome. Random is proving he's got a real talent for making this type of video game music. Once you get to this background, endless mode stays here until you die, but, stuff gets pretty intense. The ship fleets are very difficult here. Can you beat my high score? Yeah, you probably can. Okay, there we go. Henri Fox helped with some of the assets, and a few other homebrew devs pitched in here and there. I reached out to Ray to congratulate his team on this build. When asked about what's next, he told me he's looking into potentially moving Skyblaster away from Joe Engine, or at least optimizing the code to fit more things into the system memory. Whatever happens, I'm sure Skyblaster has a bright future ahead, however long it takes. The addition of new modes, loads of new songs, and a cutscene brings this closer to being a fully fledged video game. The presentation is well done, and the gameplay is addicting. Cannot wait to play the next demo. What a hell of a homebrew game.
I love to sing.
Slinga and the rest of the Saturn multiplayer task force are back with another 12-player game. For those unaware, the Saturn is capable of having 12 controllers plugged in at the same time for massive couch multiplayer. This team put together a few 12-player homebrew games already, seeking to expand the possibilities of cramming a dozen sweaty people around one video game console. Last year, they gave the world Balloonatics, a 12-player balloon fight clone which I really enjoy. This year, another Agent of Chaos, 12-player Asteroids. Welcome to Disasteroids. I was not able to get 11 other people together for this video, but, just imagine, 12 people, 12 ships, one screen, just a bloodbath of vectors. You can play this solo if you'd like to try your hands at Disasteroid Survival. The ship speed is pretty fast, so watch out. You can make slight adjustments to the game type and color settings. A simple victory in visual presentation. If anyone out there manages to get 12 people playing this at once, please record it. The world deserves to see what it looks like. This concludes the first of 3 categories for the Homebrew Contest. Next we'll be covering translations and patches. These are modifications of commercially released games, mostly Japanese to English translations. Noteworthy for its high-quality animated cutscenes, fun story, and engaging combat, Lunar 2 Eternal Blue captured high ratings from critics and the hearts of many JRPG fans. Working Designs localized it for the Sony ponies, leaving Saturn's Lunar 2 locked away in Japan. Nowadays, us Saturn enjoyers can play the English patched version of the first game, and may soon see a complete patch of its sequel. Mr. Conan gave us an early patch of Lunar 2 in last year's contest, limited to Disc 1 and left with many graphical bugs. it was in its early stages. It's using the working design script from the PlayStation port pasted into this Saturn conversion. This year, he's submitting a progress update, now with glitch-free text for items, spells, and other such things. The save and load slots are now translated along with the battle text. You can see in some dialogue, this script is defo a dub-D joint. Still, the vibes are clutch, the babes delightfully frightening, and the end battle music, oh so good. Like any good patched Saturn RPG, the main protag gets a reliable small pink creature as a sidekick. Mr. Conan also has his subtitling format figured out for those animated FMV cutscenes, but for now, only the first line appears as a sort of proof of concept. It is undubbed, retaining Japanese audio behind the English text. He says he still has lots of work left, but this is still a vast improvement from last year's demo. Like, we talking big boost. Some voice dialogue isn't synced up with translated dialogue boxes, but like, we can live with that easily. I'm sure the Saturn fanbase at large can agree in saying, we're very excited to see this get finished. Great arcade racers like Daytona and Rally are among the top favorite games across the Saturn scene. Buried beneath the surface of buttery smooth controls are a handful of niche street racing games, many of which never made it outside Japan. I'm talking stuff like Toga King the Spirits, that one initial D game, Midsan Presents for Speed. They all seem to have uniquely difficult racing mechanics that are a pain to get used to in their own way, best described as stiff and slippery. But once you get used to them, they might become fun. Drift King 97 fits this category like a glover, and it's one of the most beloved entries to this Saturn subgenre. It has its own style and flair, with the zest for smash zoom transitions, customizable cars, and full motion advice from drivers. With a growing selection of cars, you race one-on-one against a series of rivals, adding new parts to your cars along the way. The language barrier isn't that bad, but you will need to understand the menus to effectively tune up your tire shredders. Within the 2022 calendar year, Malenko translated the entire game to English, from the menus to brief dialogue boxes, even subtitling the FMV cutscenes. But the most robust change will become immediately clear to any Saturn fan. One of the rivals you race against is none other than PGA champ Craig Stadler.
You're going to have to make those putts to get to the next level.
So, some of you are going to love this, some of you might already hate this. I'm personally pleased as shit about this, of course. This palette swap out for the first rival appears to be the only major modification to the original game. So for those players who prefer patches that keep the original game intact, you can at least take some solace in knowing this is pretty much the only major change. Racing against Papa Craig is a great way to get a handle on Drift King's punishing controls. The rivals have smack talk dialogue if they beat you, and a brief concession speech if you beat them. When you first fired this up, you'll get punished pretty much every time you try to drift. Figuring out what Drift King wants you to do while on the track is a barrier itself. Piling onto that riddle are standard traffic vehicles that constantly merge into you, and sometimes into each other. But it's always nice when they run into the rival. Through more reps and more tracks, you realize Drift King wants you to customize multiple cars for certain situations, boiling down to this. Have a fast car for straightaway tracks, and a slower car with good handling for tracks with tight turns. Drifting takes near robot level precision, but the more you practice and appropriately upgrade your vehicle, the easier drifting gets. If you bump into walls, your speed's going to take a gashing cut, but this doesn't ruin your chances of an imminent victory. you're gonna need some killer instinct to be crowned Drift King, and to not let this guy brutally berate you with a passive smile.
まだまだ俺と勝負なんてな10年早いな。一昨日出直してこい。
Filmed in the great American city of Chicago, tailored to a Japanese audience, Blue Chicago Blues is the 5th entry to the J.B. Harold murder mystery visual novels. It was originally made for Laser Active, a Laserdisc machine built for compatibility with Mega Drive and PC Engine games. This is a Sega Mega LD game, so the game is on a Laserdisc. It came out in both the US and Japan in 1993. River Hill Soft then ported it to the Saturn in '95, but just for Japan. It got a few other ports on other systems as well.
These are the bullets we took from the victims' bodies.
RJack is working on reinserting English cutscenes to the Saturn game while translating the menus and the branching pathways. They're submitting this demo of the patch to the contest. So far, it's just the first 15-ish minutes of what turns out to be a 2-disc adventure. It starts with a tasteful panning shot of this woman in red getting ready for a night on the town. But then, a knife! 2 women are killed, and everyone in town is going bananas about this, since violent crime never happens in Chicago. Get a load of this gaggle of TV news reporters swarming the homicide division in a claustrophobia-inducing swarm of questions. Boy, would I hate to be one of these guys.
Who the hell are you? J.B. Harold, huh? Ted Rosen.
You play the role of a federal investigator, eager to solve the double homicide. Every few minutes, you get to choose how you respond to the world around you and how you wish to branch your pathway into the storyline. Once you get past what has been translated so far, the language barrier becomes too dense to parse. In the original game, cutscenes are dubbed in Japanese, and the choice menus are written in Japanese. All that said, the old-fashioned murder story and early 90s cinematography make this a legitimately interesting visual novel. It's awesome to see this get patched to English, and I wish the team behind this the best of luck. What I played so far was an absolute treat. This is becoming a very Craig-forward Saturn scene. Some of you may know I really like NBA Jam. Even made a 2-hour video about the Saturn port. In that video, I dreamt of what it would be like to have the great Pebble Beach Golf Link star Craig Stadler as a playable basketballer. As luck would have it, Malenko is on my side in life. After seeing my video, he took the time to crack into the Saturn port's code and patch in the Walrus, promising to fully power up all his stats, thus making our iron-throwing stallion the best player in NBA Jam Walrus Edition.
He's on fire!
Malenko paid a pixel artist to get well-drawn Craig heads from various angles. He's injecting the sprites and other elements into pre-existing secret characters. Yeah, this does mean we can no longer play as fan-favorite Minnesota Timberwolves mascot Crunch, but the payoff is obvi worthwhile.
Showtime!
Since he already got this far, he figured he better put in other secret players. In this patch, you can also play as the Blue Blur, Sub-Zero, Reptile, and Scorpion.
He's heating up!
Another cool add-on are banner ads for things like Sega Lord X and Shiro Media Group. There's also some panda face thing he threw in. Worth noting, Malenko documented his modding process, so if other people are interested in patching in other faces, the groundwork is set. With how robust PS1 Jam modding has become, it's nice to finally see the same love on Saturn's port. Getting in Sonic and Craig Stadler are clear choices for a project like this. Hats off to you, Malenko. Thank you so much for making a Panda Man's weird dream come true. This does make me incredibly happy. Boom shakalaka, right down the middle.
Hooks it in! He's on fire!
The mecha piloting theater troupe is back. In a grand gesture to formally announce we're working on it, the Sakura Wars translation team is bringing the sequel to us English speakers. This submission to the Homebrew Contest is their way of publicly revealing the project. What's being submitted is not a patch for the entire game or even a partial patch. This is a translation of the official demo disc, Sakura Taisen 2 Tokubetsuban. This pretty much translates to Sakura Wars 2 Special Edition. It starts with the cutscene. Trekkies Unite 118 says for each piece of text hard-coded into the Cinepack video, he had to carefully redraw the English text. He also managed to change the image assets on this start menu so that it animates just like the original, while also displaying the same style of text in English. The several other people translating and coding in text are mostly the same people who translated the first game. It's a short demo with no gameplay. Sakura Shinguji talks to the player, introducing some of the dialogue elements new to this game, and a couple of new characters. It will probably take you about 10 minutes to get through this taste of what's to come. Like before, the quality of the translation and look of the text is top-notch. If this is any sign of what the final product will be like, then I can confidently say the Saturn scene has something excellent to look forward to. As some of you might know, there's a separate team translating Sakura Taisen 3 for Dreamcast. Trekkies mentioned something super interesting in a recent Shiro livestream. He's looking into the possibility of transferring save data from Saturn Sakura Wars 2 to Sakura Wars 3 for Dreamcast. If he pulls this off, I believe it would be the first time this has ever been done. He's still looking into if it's possible, saying, quote, no promises. But they can of course promise a translation patch of Game 2, so that's pretty sick. Hats off to the entire team, can't wait for this one.
I'll tell you, with that lovely theme, it is suddenly karaoke night here in the KTH studios. All our...
Here we have a vibe and a half. The contest host himself, Dr. Emerald Nova, is now working on a translation patch for the Saturn roguelike, labeling it Bastard Baroque. The name roguelike is such a fickle thing. Like, I'm only calling it that because other people are, so you might be like, actually? Point is, if you ever had any interest in Kingsfield, you'll probably enjoy Baroque. The patch is about 30% done, and we can see there are still lots of formatting issues with many of the dialogue boxes and inventory text. The game itself is a first-person action-adventure with lots of black, red, gray, and brown. You're gonna crawl through a lot of dungeons and kill a lot of monsters with a lot of different items and weapons and magic spells in this dark and steamy environment. The post-apocalyptic plot has something to do with a failed experiment messing around with the absolute god, and now there's a shit ton of monsters. You have to fight your way through the Neuro Tower and defeat God or something. The game itself plays a lot like Robotica, except it's actually good. You get mostly melee weapons, one-time use magic spells, and the occasional gun, fighting floating fish skeletons, droidica prototypes, and HR Geiger ladies. When compared to the PlayStation version, we can see the Saturn is treating draw distance in a way that looks a little less jarring in my opinion, plus the colors are darker on Saturn, better fitting the vibe. It does appear to run at a slightly slower frame rate, but not enough to cry about. I did not do a lot of frame rate testing here, I'm no John Linneman. The game loop takes some getting used to, and the patch is so far difficult to parse in places, but there's enough understandable text for you to get by. Definitely an early work in progress, but I'm super happy this is finally getting a patch. From the team that brought us the Bulk Slash patch, dominating the translations category in last year's competition, comes a demo of their Stellar Assault SS localization. Much like the Sakura Wars 2 entry, This is an official demo of the game, patched to English, previewing the eventual translation of the entire game, still being worked on. Much like in Bulk Slash, they're getting a team of voice actors and actresses to dub the entire game to English.
Their technology had simply been no match for that of mankind.
If this demo's not good enough for you, my teammates at Shiro Media Group got to play early versions of the final build. You can watch the VODs on the Shiro YouTube channel. Stellar Assault is a space combat game with
creamy 3D graphics.
Coming out in 1998, right when the Saturn's plug was pulled in the West. This was never released outside Japan. In this demo, we get a dubbed cutscene and a very brief sample of the gameplay.
Had we not undergone a technological revolution over those 2 years, they might have wiped us out then and there.
They even put in a splash screen teasing the final release of the patch, set to come out this spring. Very excited to play the final game. If you're offended by the fact that it's a dub, then, well, my condolences to you. You can take your complaints to /VR/ or the CD Romance comment section. I think just like the Bulk Slash patch, the entire team is doing a stellar job so far. As if patching in English text scripts wasn't hard enough, they're going the extra mile to patch in new audio files and even redo cutscene songs for the sake of inserting dubbed voiceovers. Incredible work all around. In just a few months, we should be able to play the final build of this patch, and that's pretty exciting. Keep a lookout for this one. A while back, the Southern Sega gentleman said if you want a Saturn game patched to English, the best thing you can do is learn how to patch it yourself. This is a community effort after all. Now, Samwise of the South is putting his money where his mouth is. The Sega YouTuber is submitting a nearly complete English patch of the explosive Mech Battler sequel, GunGriffon II. The first GunGriffon came out in both Japan and the West throughout 1996. Much like the aforementioned Stellar Assault, development on GunGriffon II wrapped up in 1998, too late for a Western release. While the game is locked in Japan, you could sort of play it without understanding it, but the weapon descriptions, objectives, and plot are all in Japanese. Until today. SSG, with help from Night of Dragon and Greg Lackerware, has most of the translated text injected to GunGriffon II. English readers can now play through this game while understanding what the heck is going on. He says 90% of the text is translated, not counting some of the in-game text. These little text boxes that pop up during gameplay are programmed in as images. These, along with the English audio, will be swapped in at a later time during the project's beta phase. As for the game itself, I mean, just look at these delightful explosions and missiles and sick jumps and mecha fights. Hell yeah! Need I say more? GunGriffon fucks. Giant thank you to the SSG for taking on this project.
Play games, surf the net.
For the next few minutes, I'm going to break the formula of this video a little bit, covering multiple entries at once, across multiple categories. These are all submissions that pertain to Saturn Netlink. With the help of YouTuber Retrospectors, who I highly recommend you all check out, we will discuss the Netlink entries in one swoop. He has lots of real-life experience with Saturn Netlink, while I have none.
Wait, do you not have a Sega Saturn
Netlink
cartridge? Look at Mr. Sega Saturn review over here, huh? Shame! Shame! Shame!
For the past 6 years, your best bet of playing online multiplayer on your Sega Saturn was by using the VoIP method. Some games lag more than others, and some of the Japanese games were straight up unplayable. But now, with Sega RPG Fan aka Joe's Netband Tunnel, not only has he eliminated virtually all of the lag, but those previously unplayable Japanese games are now playable and running great. The cool thing is not only can you have this Netband Tunnel running off your PC, but you can also have it running on a DreamPie. Yes, the same DreamPie that you used to connect online with your Dreamcast would now be able to play online with Sega Saturn II. Double Dime has just hosted a Virtua Fighter Remix tournament and a decathlete tournament which is currently ongoing, which would not have been possible without Joe's netband tunnel.
We've seen the Netlink options expand greatly for the Saturn scene. Many are using newer tools and software to get two Saturns separated by states, provinces, and nations to connect for multiplayer, partying like it's 1997. Now this capability is being expanded to emulation. Night of Dragon is entering in the Netlink OS, which uses an array of devices to connect Saturns. This includes anyone with a USB dev cart, a Netlink modem, an X-band modem, or the Yabause emulator. Right, so this dude made it so a Yabause emulator running on a computer can netplay with a real Saturn hundreds of miles away. That's not so. Technically, this submission of his includes the original game Unnamed Shooter app, which is just a very bare bones, basic netplay 2D shooter game. On top of all this, Knight is also submitting the Bomberman Netlink OS patch, which basically patches this game with the ability to use newer Netlink software crafted by homebrewers. Again, we can see retrospectors using it here, with one end being Saturn hardware and the other being Yabause. He says it works, but it's a little laggy, sort of like in the 2020 VoIP days. He had to enter an action replay code into Yabause to get the controls to work properly. Knight sent in the 3 submissions, all married in a polygamy of Saturn online multiplayer. You thought he was done? He ain't. For the first time, Night of Dragon submitting something in the physical realm. You're looking at 3D printed serial cable attachments. He's sending in the 3D printer files to the contest. Now, I don't have access to a 3D printer, but Knight did post some pictures of how this can be used to get one end of an Ethernet wire into the serial port of your Saturn. That's right, we out here making peripherals in the Saturn homebrew scene. That's pretty sick. In the future, Knight plans to get his Netlink OS to support the serial port, the controller port, and quote, anything you can think of. Sounds like the Netlink scene is really exploding, but you don't have to take my word for it.
Anthony Knight of the Dragon has modified some of Joe's netband tunnel to create something called the Netlink OS. What's cool about the Netlink OS is that it has a directory feature, with the hope of filling it with as many users as possible so dialing your opponent can be seamless. The fact that it's compatible with not only the modem, but also the USB dev cart, the Yabause emulator, and Anthony's own serial cable that he is currently working on makes me really excited for the future of Netlink OS.
Major shout out and thank you to Retrospectors for all the help with this part of the video. I really appreciate your insight. Someday I too will get my Saturn online, but yeah, that requires a little bit of setup. That's it for the translations patches section. We're going to move on to the third and final category, tools and utilities. One of the Saturn homebrew scene's best strengths is how its developers are helpful to each other. The group consistently releases helpful tools to the public, which wind up making all future projects stronger than before. Trekkies Unite 118 is carrying on the torch of tooling with the Sega Saturn Film Muxer. Many Saturn games with FMVs use the Cinepack format. This is a Java tool that can easily combine Cinepack audio and video into one Cinepack file. It's going to be particularly useful for anyone working on translation patches. You can take the original Japanese audio of a cutscene and easily combine it with a custom Cinepack video stream that adds subtitles. Or if you're making an English dub, the patcher could take the new English audio and put it to the original Japanese Cinepack. The files have to match frame rate, frame amount, and resolution. Many in the scene know Trekkies for his work in projects like the Sakura Wars translation, and that is a lot of new Cinepack videos with English subs. He says he would eventually like to expand this tool to become a replacement for Movie to Saturn, and replace the need to do this in a Mac OS environment. PoneNut submitted the excellent PoneSound Saturn audio driver to last year's contest, met with great applause from the homebrew community. Let's get a tally of how many entries from this year are using PoneSound, to my knowledge. The Irreel port, Bridget Bishop, Wolfenstein, Sky Blaster, and potentially other recent games where PoneSound is perhaps uncredited. This sound driver is clearly a significant tool in the modern Saturn scene. If you're wondering what this is, in PoneNut's words, it's driver software for the Sega Saturn to use the M6 8K to control the SCSP for the playback of CDDA, ADX, and uncompressed PCM audio. New this year, it now enables a greater number of sounds to be played, and quality floor for compressed audio was lowered. It would seem Ponut is constantly updating the driver with new features and fixes. Clearly, the developers are getting a lot of mileage out of this tool, so hats off to Ponut once again for the outstanding work. Irreel isn't stopping at Chip 8 this year. In the utilities category, he's entering in SaveQR. This package also includes a Windows tool that lets you do the same thing with BUP save files. So you could take a save from a console and basically get it on your computer. From here, one could convert what was once a QR code save to any other save format with the save converter from Night of Dragon. If the save file is rather large, the QR code converter just brings it up as multiple QR codes. Now you can send your friends Sega Rally Ghost data in the form of a QR code. Now you can send Sakura Wars Romance Progress to a friend via QR code. Now you can send one SimCity through a massive thread of GigaChat QR codes. And that's it, another smashing homebrew contest season from SegaXtreme. Ranking them is the most difficult part since I really do love all the submissions, even Magic. We are being asked to grade based on progress, so if there was a patch or game that was submitted last year or a year prior, we have to rank it based on what was done since then. So you might see some games rank lower than where you think they should place based on that reason alone. There are many other homebrew projects and patches being worked on right now that did not get submitted. Blue Skies was a winner of last year's competition. They did not submit a build this year, but it's definitely something to keep looking out for. XL2 has submitted many builds of Hellslave in past competitions, did not submit one this year, but I imagine there's a good chance we might see more Hellslave later on, and if you haven't tried it out, I would highly recommend picking up the Deathmatched build. Zygo. We saw a 2D version of this game submitted to last year's homebrew contest. This year, the developer posted video of a 3D version of Zygo up and running. It was not submitted this year, but I do find it pretty nice. There's talk of Open Lara possibly coming to the Saturn. That would be sick. Ross built the Sega Rally patch that's pretty funky. You can play as some of the other cars seen in the game, and more importantly, the helicopter. Look at this. That's just great. Cube Cats. That's a favorite in the homebrew scene. A really good build of it was submitted to last year's contest. Seven Shades is still working on Cube Cat. We know that for sure. It just didn't get a chance to submitting a build this year, and that's fine. Trekkies converted the entirety of How the Grinch Stole Christmas to Cinepack. It cannot be shared online for copyright reasons. Retro Dad Modern Lad built Sega Worldwide Soccer 23, a modern-day patch of Sega Worldwide Soccer. A lot of work put into this one, many edits to the players. There's an English patch of Phantasmagoria being worked on. That's mostly done and available for download. Grandia from Trekkies Unite. That English translation crossed the finish line. It's officially gold now. Did not get submitted this year because the changes made since its last submission are very minimal, but it's done. Ninpan Manmaru has an English patch, as well as Yumimi Remix, Ogre Battle, Ease, or YS, or you want to call it. Terra Fantastica is getting worked on. Bomberman Fight's getting worked on. If any of you were paying attention to the Saga 22 competition last year, Sonic Ring Worlds was submitted to it, and that looks fantastic. Some guys, I guess, working on Biohazard too, so that's pretty cool. There's many games getting French translations. This Japanese homebrew developer is making a Famicom emulator, NES if you want to call it that. And there's also the Tomb Raider Unfinished Business project being worked on for Saturn. Very exciting stuff there. My bounty for an Omakase Savers patch is still on. If anyone translates Omakase Savers and makes an English patch, I will buy you a Sega Saturn game valued at around $100. This is serious. I will do it if anyone does this. Just don't try to get like 8 other people involved that translated a line to like scam me into buying multiple $100 Saturn games. Like, come on, use common sense. Terrific job to everybody who submitted entries this year. It's a very exciting time for the Saturn scene, and this homebrew contest is definitely proof of that. There's so many projects to look out for, and many finished projects to enjoy right now. But I did notice one glaring problem with this year's contest. Where the f*** is Garfield? In the last 2 contests I judged, there was always a Garfield meme somewhere. This year, no orange cat. Do we love Mondays now? This is the one category where I expect better from the homebrew devs. Bring back the cat. compared to like every other retro console scene, I really do believe the Saturn is one of the strongest scenes. Shout out to everybody putting in the hard work to make this scene shine and sparkle. Great work to everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a good rest of your day.